Welcome to It's Good to Talk, the podcast that equips parents with conversations they need to have. My name is Emma McLean. I'm an executive coach. I work exclusively with working parents. Working and having a family is darn hard. And a way to get through this time in your life is to have better conversations. It's to talk about it. I believe that hope is not a strategy. Asking for what you need is, and that's why it's good to talk. Let's get into it. Welcome back. It's your friend Emma, and today on It's Good to Talk, I'm talking with a client of mine. Someone who I feel like I've known for a long time. I want to introduce to you Danielle Chew. And Danielle's going to introduce herself, but I think I was trying to think about where I first met you, Danielle, but I think you might have come along to an online sort of webinar I might have done during lockdown, where I did some sessions, maybe for ANZ, around if you have your children at home, how do you work while in a lockdown and also look after your children? And spoiler alert for everyone who didn't come to that, you can't. And then I have had the great honor of working with Danielle on doing some coaching, but also I have worked with her in her role at ANZ. And so, first of all, I just want to say welcome, Danielle, and I'm so happy to be talking with you. And would you just like to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yeah, thanks, Emma. Thanks for having me. Yeah, my name's Danny or Danielle, and I work for ANZ, as Emma said, and I have two children, two girls. One's almost 8 and the other's just turned 5, so both school age, which is very challenging at times, as we all know. And I bring up my children with my partner, Bill, who also actually happens to work at ANZ. And we live in Auckland, and one of the roles that I hold at ANZ is the co-chair of that, what we call the ANZ Whānau Network, which is the working parents network at ANZ that I set up about maybe 3 years ago now. So that's sort of alongside my day job, and I really try to drive better outcomes for working parents within ANZ and how we can be a better employer and what we can do to kind of allow parents to thrive both in their sort of home sort of lives but at work as well.
A couple of things there I want to pick up on. First of all, two little ladies at school. We are currently talking on day 1 of term 4. Tell me, how did school holidays go for you?
Challenging. Lucky I was prepared in advance and planned a
Yeah.
holiday for the first week away.
Yep.
So that was really nice. We went to Gold Coast, which was a great time to take kids there when they're sort of those ages, which was awesome. And then the last week we've sort of been juggling between me and my husband. School holiday gift programs at $75 a child times 2 is steep, my ask. So yeah, we decided we'd just take some leave. But equally, I'm glad they're back at school.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear you talk that back, right, yeah, the cost of school holiday programs, and then saying, oh, I think I'll just take leave. But then when you look at the cost of leave,
Yes.
like all of this stuff is framed up like it's a choice, but there are no choices, are they? Like,
No. Yeah, and you talk to some working parents that have older children that are into like basketball or netball, and so they want to do a 5-day program, and then you've got 3 kids, and it all adds up.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Thinking about ANZ, and I can't believe that you were one of the drivers behind establishing the Whānau Network 3 years ago. And you talked about it like as achieving better outcomes for parents, working parents at ANZ. And what I'm curious about is what makes that important for you? Because this is stuff you do. This is an employee resource group, right? So it's over and above our day jobs. And effectively, you've taken a leadership position on this for the bank. And I'm wondering what makes this mahi really resonate for you?
Well, funny enough, I reflected on this recently because we presented to our leadership team on what we're doing at the Whānau Network, and I was reflecting on why I set it up and what sort of some of the reasons why. And I think that's kind of an important place to sort of start is when my daughters were younger, when my oldest daughter was born, I was actually the main carer for my grandmother as well. And so although she was in a village and she was sort of living on her own stuff, I was the only one in Auckland and I'd see her regularly and things. She was a stay-at-home mum until my mum went to school. So my mum's the youngest of 3 kids. So when she went to school, she realised that she was kind of starting to get a bit of anxiety and a bit of depression being a stay-at-home mum because she's basically bored, right? So she ended up going to work for Auckland Grammar School at the time. She worked for them for almost 27 years, one of only a few females at the time that worked there. And she used to say to me, you need to stay in the workforce, but not at the detriment to my care or your daughter's care. So how do you do that, right? That's the ultimate juggle when you've got, you know, both caring at the older end as well as the young end. And she really sort of supported me in that because she knew, right? If you take your time out of the workforce, there's other downsides. There's pros and cons to both scenario, whether you stay in or you leave. And so she really encouraged me. And that was one of the things that really made me think about the network and how I'm in a fairly senior role at the bank and I have quite a lot of privilege. And I was able to negotiate part-time work and all these things, but not everybody does. So then how do I use my privilege to then, path the way for others that I work with and that are coming behind me? Because I feel like most of the time where it's about having, helping people up the ladder rather than, just making it kind of the same, whether it's from my grandmother's sort of stage right through to me. And I think this sort of setup with working and caring it was never meant to be like this, right? So how do we make it work better for our parents that are working and our workplaces so they're better set up to help parents thrive?
Whoa. That is such a cool story. Wow, your grandmother sounds like the boss.
Yeah, she was. She was amazing. She passed away a couple of years ago, but yeah, both my girls got to meet her, which was amazing. And yeah, like one of the things that we used to talk about a lot is how she had a bit of regret though around working full time and the kids and not being able to spend with them. So that's also another sort of challenge that we all have, right? With and her time or now, how do we balance all the responsibilities we have and still going to spend our time with our kids and enjoy it as well on the way. So that's a constant kind of challenge as well.
Yeah, it's again in my work as well, it is a constant repeatable thing we're trying to do, which is keep our foot in the workforce but keep enough time with our family. And sometimes it feels impossible to do that.
Yeah. And I always think it's a bit of a blend, right? There's no sort of balance here. Like sometimes you have to work more than you ideally, and sometimes you have to do more care than ideal, and just need to try and make it work. And that's why I think also, bringing dads in and being more involved is so key. And I've been talking with Joe quite a lot and internally around how we change our parental leave policy to really include dads more or, sort of secondary carers or make sure we're sort of sharing that parental leave more because we know, lots of research shows that the more that we can juggle that or share that parental leave period, that really helps in future years with parents sharing the load at the early days.
So I love that point, and we will talk about that more because, I also agree with that, Danny. What I'm curious about is because I love that you are talking to other people, ANZ, Joe Considine, who is currently working at ANZ, who is a friend of the show,
Yes.
has been on the podcast several times, talking about like parental leave policy, in addition to creating this community of working parents, a whānau of working parents.
Yes.
And I think that's really cool that this kind of group you've created seems to have some tactical streams running but also some strategic input into how we make life better for parents. And I'd wanted to call that out because there might be listeners to the podcast that work in a large organization that doesn't have one of these, right? And so what I want to know is, how do you think that's happened, that you've created this whānau network that, and again, you can talk about how it actually operates on a day-to-day basis and whether you have meetings or how it works, but also you're having these strategic conversations around whether we provide paid parental leave for secondary carers.
Mm. Yeah, so the way that we set it up or look at it really is that we have sort of essentially kind of couple of streams or key sort of streams of work that we lean into. And one is this sort of policy piece. What are the policies that we have internally or should have internally that really support working parents or can enhance the working parent journey? And kind of parental leave policy is kind of the key one, right? Because that's where you sort of start your journey largely as a working parent, and how do we support that through? And we know, we've had a lot of discussion about this, that we're kind of behind some of the other policies in New Zealand for large corporates in this space now, but we're a global organisation, so we've got to work through those things in a global context as well within the bank. So that's where we sort of lean into largely. There's also flexible work as another key kind of policy, that kind of those working scenarios, whether that's part-time, job shares, working from home sometimes, working in the office, those kind of things. So flexible. So those kind of the two policies, and that's where we kind of really lean in strategically on how we can enhance those for working parents and sort of provide that lens. So then we also work, more like sort of tactically or event sort of based. That's another sort of stream that we sort of lean into. So what are the sort of relevant maybe speakers that we could hold events on, or people that we could bring into the organisation to kind of help working parents? So like for last year, for example, Safe came and talked to our working parents, and we kind of opened this up to anyone really, around how you can keep your children safe online, for example, because that's obviously a growing space that we all need to kind of consider and lean into. And so that's probably like sort of event-based stuff, whether that's trying to meet in person. And then the other sort of stream is sort of around more experience, like what I'd sort of talk about as experience. I'm trying not to use too much technical jargon in the ANZ sense. So we work with yourself, Emma, obviously on our what we call returning with confidence programs. That's parents that are returning back into the bank after a period of parental leave, and providing that sort of support as a program, as a group cohort going through that, and kind of really sort of sharing experiences and learning from you around some tips and tricks as well that we can use when we return back into work, and having those conversations with our line managers, with our support at home as well. So that's sort of some of the things we do, and there's so many other ideas and things that we could be doing, but you can't do them all, and it's all side of the desk as well.
Yeah, exactly. We can do anything, but we can't do everything. But I, when I hear you talk that back, I love that. You've got your events, you've got your experiences, but also it feels like you're developing this, for whatever better word, subject matter experts, or the voice of working parents, right? Like, so, it's a bit like people, if you're a customer experience expert, people will go to you and go, what do you think the customer would say? But people might be coming to you and go, so we're thinking about extending parental leave to this. What do you think? Is that kind of how it works?
Exactly. Yeah. And what we're really trying to do now is like sort of what I said to the leadership team recently is we've sort of established kind of like our good base of like, we've tried a few things, some things work, some things don't work, or like we kind of can enhance that piece, but now we can really more move strategically to align to the business goals as well. How do we grow our women in leadership? What are the initiatives we're doing that then align to women in leadership was really important to us? How do we grow our Māori and Pacifica leadership talent? What sort of support could we give or provide that's specific more to them as well, So that's where I sort of see the group going now, and into the future is that more strategic piece. How do we make sure that we kind of, consider them as well in our sort of stats basis as well? We know that around 70 to 80% of people generally have caring responsibilities of some sort. So how do we, make sure that we're really considering all of those caring responsibilities, not just children as well?
I love that frame up, and it's something I say all the time. This caregiving is not a niche thing.
Yes.
I mean, I remember this year I did a presentation for International Women's Day to a really large business, not ANZ. And I remember they said to me, don't talk about caregiving. And I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, because I'll talk about whatever. If you guys are going to pay me, I'll talk about whatever you want me to talk about. But I thought it was quite interesting because I felt they thought, oh, it will isolate people. Most people are caregivers, whether it's aging parents, whether it's friends who have cancer, whether it is our dogs, our cats, our children. Most people are human.
Yes.
And they have relationships, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Like, you can't, like the blend we talked about, how do you kind of have these things as separate in the way we
Yeah,
operate these days, especially with
yeah,
technology? It's hard to separate these things. How do we make sure we make room for both?
yeah. And when it comes to your events, and if you get your whānau network together, whether that's on Teams or in person, what have you observed around what questions arise or what conversations kind of gather the most hearts and thumbs up and emojis in the Teams message? Like, what do you think? What is it that people really want to know about? I mean, like, is it this net safe stuff? Is it online harm and keeping our kids safe online? Is it how to work part-time successfully? Is it how do people manage school holidays? What are your observations on some of the conversations that seem to resonate?
Yeah, probably all of the above. So we do, for context, we do run roughly quarterly or 3 times a year a sort of going on parental leave sort of type session. It's more around policy, understanding, what options you have, suggestions on framing up with line managers, the system that we use, how do we apply, all those kind of like more technical elements, how to share the leave if you want to share it, if you're partnered, those sorts of things. And even just asking questions around, or the tax, there's a secondary tax component that happens with ANZ because we top up. So those sort of practical things, people like that kind of conversation where, 60 odd people might join the call, which we've got planned for later this week, and they might kind of listen to us and us share a bit of technical kind of information, but be able to ask questions on their relevant individual circumstance. We also always include a recent returner into that call to talk about what they did, what leave they took, how they returned in, whether that's using some of their annual leave to go part-time, frame up with line managers, that kind of thing. We're actually having a dad come on to the call this week, which I'm quite excited about, which is awesome because we're seeing more and more dads take parental leave in AZ, which is awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on the context. The other thing is we have had a focus this year on part-time roles, and just we've really started with sharing people's experiences from an individual level and how they work part-time and how they maybe set it up with their line managers, how they work now, what's their arrangement. And I think those kind of conversations are really useful because you realize that you're not the only one, but also like you kind of learn from others around, they're in a frontline kind of customer facing role. They decided to approach their line manager in these sorts of ways, or they structured their week, 3 days over 4 or whatever it might be. And you just realize that actually we can do it, right? It's just people need to be open from a leadership perspective, but also the individual needs to also realize that sometimes it won't always work, or it might only work for some of the time. And flex needs to happen both ways. That's the most important thing. So, and then I would say dads, like I'm really keen to push in, as you know, to this sort of space in the next couple of years, bringing more dads into the conversation. And I don't want it to be a mum's club, this is an arrangement that we have. We're 50-50 in most situations with a mum and dad. And so how do we make sure we're bringing dads in and leaning into that, whether it's parental leave, whether it's flexible working, whether it's part-time work, whether it's helping us push, changes on policy that really enhance the dad's experience as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's some of the sort of kind of areas, but I think
Mm.
those come up. The other big conversation that comes up quite a lot is what we term in the Whānau Network as line manager lottery. So often line managers can make or break your experience as a working parent or, employee, full stop, actually. So how do we get that sort of leadership challenge or opportunity fine-tuned so leaders really can be open to working with their working parent
Yes.
or their, employee on whether it's flexible working for a period of time, or maybe realizing that when they're transitioning to this sort of stage where I'm at now, school age, it's hard, right? Like sometimes you need to change your scenario with your work, even for a period of time, to help those adjustments. Yeah, so that's one area that often comes up in conversation.
Yeah, and I think, when it comes to line managers or people leaders, across all my fantastically progressive clients, this stuff is really hard for our leaders because often they are at full capacity. And if they haven't been a parent or returned to work themselves, it's very hard to put yourself in their parents' shoes. But I think all leaders want to do the best they can. And if we can put a bit of a care wrap around them and help them to deviate from the norm, because I think it will lead to better outcomes in general. That's really important work, and it's really important conversations to have.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing I always think about in these scenarios, right? Everybody's trying their best, and sometimes we just also need to try different ways. I often have grads talk to me about how I work part-time, right? People want to work for them, even if they're not a carer. Like, how do we make sure we're having those conversations and opening that opportunity up for others? And this is actually also like the way of work for the future, like working part-time job shares, like 9 to 5 is pretty much done. Let's move forward, like, yeah.
Yeah, let's put that to one side. And I think for me, a lot of leadership is getting curious about other people's lived experience. And an example I always quote, it's very old, but when Sheryl Sandberg worked at Google, before she was at Facebook, she was pregnant. And at Google, that was in Silicon Valley, and they have these enormous campuses with enormous car parks.
Yeah, the car park, yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, she came in one morning and she went into the CEO's office and she goes, everyone who's pregnant needs priority parking. And he was like, I don't know what, I can't remember what his name was, Larry, maybe it was Larry. He goes, what? She goes, have you tried to walk across that car park when you are 8 months pregnant and needed to go to the toilet or something like that? And he's, what are you even talking about? Of course they can have priority parking. Good, we're making it happen. But unless Sheryl had experienced that, would that have happened? And it sounds like a tiny little thing, but it's actually a really big thing.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard being pregnant.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So I think getting curious about what it is to be someone else, and I really want to acknowledge your point, Danny, that I heard where you said, like, I've got a lot of privilege and I was able to negotiate a part-time role, but not everyone has that privilege. And so for me, that shows me that you're curious about other people's experience. And I think that's just a core leadership capability we need in everyone.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
it's really hard. I was remiss because I did not introduce Danny as a 2024 New Zealand part-time powerlister. Did I?
That's true.
She was one of the OGs. She was on the original list. And my question for you, my friend, is you've probably worked sort of a lot of different rhythms in your career to date. What difference has part-time made to you, do you think? Senior part-time work. What difference has it made to you?
Well, personally, I think that I probably would have stopped working for a period of time if I couldn't work part-time. I took first time maybe 12 months parental leave, and second time 9 months, because the bank actually asked me if I'd come back early to work on a project. So, and I kind of said that second time I'd only do it if I could do 3 days a week, like I'm not really interested in coming back earlier at this stage. And then COVID lockdown happened and I slightly regretted the whole thing. I do think that, and my husband reminds me of this often actually, because I actually forgot that we had this conversation, but he reminds me that I said in early days of having Isabel, our oldest, that we didn't have her to put her into care full time. We didn't have her to, be kind of on the shelf as something that, we don't really interact with kind of thing. And I guess that's a big part of my sort of personal feeling about having children, and that's not for everybody. And a lot of people outsource care, and I'm, all for it if it needs to be part of how you operate as a family. But I didn't want my children to be in full-time care, and I wanted to be part of their life. And that probably comes back to that piece that I talked about with my grandmother, and my mother was also similar, right? She was a solo mother for most of my childhood, and she worked damn hard, and I know how hard it was for her. And I kind of feel like I need like I said about the privilege and helping others, how do I make it better for me and my girls going forward as well? And, we could have probably survived, I guess, on one income if we needed to. And I do think, though, at the time, I remember talking to some people that didn't work when their kids were younger, and they said you need to stay in. The workforce is so hard to get back in, so there was pros and cons of doing that, right? That a lot of part-time work, gosh, I see, like even the school librarian, I think, God, what an awesome job that be. But, I'd probably be paid about a third of what I'm paid now. So, this is why we need more part-time roles that are senior, that are in the same field as we're trained in. Like I often talk at the school gate. I do school pickup pretty much every day with my girls, and I talk to doctors and lawyers and marketers that if they can't get that part-time work, they just drop out. And I just think this is such a wasted talent every day coming to school pickup. I'm not saying you shouldn't do school pickup, but that part-time work is so key to be able to keep people in the workforce. And that's where the motherhood penalty comes in, right? 80% of the penalty is around this part-time work, and parental leave are the two big factors on how do we change that.
Yeah. I kind of get tingles when you tell me those stories at the school gate, right? I believe that to be true. I'm much older than you, Danny. I'm much older than you, and I've been there, done that, and got the T-shirt. And I've seen the mums that, in quotes, have off-ramped.
Yeah.
I've seen them, and I know why they do it, and I don't have any shade for them, but it deeply fatigues me.
And
Because
there's more and more dads now too. Like the same thing. Oh, well, my wife can't get part-time work. I earn less than her, so I'm going to drop out completely. It's like, well, that's why we need part-time roles for them as well as us,
Yeah. Part-time roles for all genders. And I think if we don't address this real lack of innovation in job design in New Zealand, I don't know how we're ever going to change any of the statistics. Because, as I always say, you can't think yourself out of a pickle. You actually need to do things differently.
Exactly.
You need to design accurately scoped, deliberately crafted, reduced hour roles, externally advertise them, and make them available for all genders.
Yeah.
And then I think we will, because to your point, also, not just because you've got young kids, but because you have a life.
Yes.
Because you have other things going on. And so I think it's really important. And I love that you advocate for that in the Whānau Network. It's just really, really powerful. And there is another ANZer featured on the list this year.
Yes.
So next year, we just need more. We need more senior ANZers. Danny, just my final question so I can release you. We're doing this at night, so I'm not even sure if your daughters are in bed. I hope someone else is doing that job.
Fast asleep.
They may be
fast
listening.
Asleep.
Oh, they're fast asleep. You're a legend. When I called this podcast, It's Good to Talk, because in my coaching practice, it is so often that the way forward is a better conversation with someone. And what I'm curious about is, what do you think is one of the most important conversations to have when you're a working parent? I mean, you can frame that in any way, whether it's with your manager, whether it's with your partner, whether it's with your family. What do you think is a really important conversation, or even a question, or what's something you really wish all working parents kind of, maybe it's a conversation with yourself, front faced into? We're deliberate, we're intentional about.
So many.
She's like, yeah.
I do think that this sort of value piece around your parenting is
Yeah.
important, right? Like I said before, it was important to me that I could spend some time, particularly when my children were young, with them, as well as work, and show them that it's possible to do both, but not to burn out. And I had PTSD post the earthquakes in Christchurch, so I kind of really knew myself that I couldn't probably cope with it all and do it well and not burn out. So I think that kind of questioning on your values around your parenting and your work and your career, and that is generally done through conversations with your line manager or your people leader, with your partner if you're partnered, and how you make this work. And it's not like we set these things in stone, but we really need some grounding kind of principles and values, I think, because that helps us have those conversations. You might ask for a flexible working request that then's declined, but you might negotiate something different, but that's still in line with those values potentially, or should be if you're going to accept them, I guess, with your work. Or
Yeah. No, I love that. So getting clear on your values. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your reflective answers and for sharing a bit of the story at ANZ and what you were trying to do, which I think is just such great leadership by you and by the bank. So I want to acknowledge that. I know that this is not your natural place, the podcast world, but thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Emma.
Welcome. Onwards and upwards. Thank you for listening to this episode of It's Good to Talk. This podcast was brought to you by Works for Everyone. It's the business that I own, your host, Emma McLean. We are a company that partners with progressive businesses to help support their mums and dads in the workplace and at home through innovative leadership programs, executive coaching, and keynote speaking. I hope you did like this episode. If you did, please follow on your favorite podcast platforms, share with a friend, and if you want to know any more information, check out Works for Everyone on Instagram or on the interweb. Until next time, remember, it's good to talk.